London, Paris, Rome, the glory of empire, the triumph of victory, the grandeur of royalty. Timeless treasures, artistic wonders, splendid facades, Piazza Navona, Notre Dame. Throughout the ages, the brilliance of these cities reached out like streams of light, illuminating the rest of the world. Every dimension of Western society flourished under their influence. Today, each city, unique in its own language, culture, and endeavor, stands proud at the forefront of Western achievement. Whether it's La Dolce Vita, La Douce Vie, it's all here. In a bambina's smile, the artiste's palette, in royal magnificence. These are the great cities of Europe. From the very first moment, London welcomes you the way it welcomes its queen, engulfing you in rich layers of history and centuries of culture. Kings and conquerors, royal knights and famous poets have all left their mark. For this is the land of Shakespeare and Ben Jonson, Sir Thomas More, and Queen Victoria, all of whom are part of the pomp and pageantry, the voice of trumpets and tradition. London's atmosphere reeks of history and harmony, of stately squares and monuments, of order and elegance. It's a city to get lost in, with new exciting visions at every turn. Often called the last bastion of civilization, London exerts an irresistible pull, drawing visitors like a magnet to its timeless magnificence. London, a giant city. A city of over 600 square miles has a population of some 7 million. One of the largest cities in the world, it is here because of the River Thames. It was the River Thames that thousands of years ago gave primitive man the means of travel, fishing, washing, drinking, and so communities gathered alongside the river. It was a crossing point used by the Celtic race, who were here when the Romans arrived in the 1st century, and the name the Romans gave was Londinium. We don't quite know why they called it Londinium. It could have been inspired by the name of an old Celtic chieftain, or it may have been from the Celtic words Lyn Din, which mean pool by the hill. For whatever reason, it was called Londinium by the Romans, and the wall that they built shaped the city as we see it today. The wall lasted until the 1600s, but by then, instead of a nice, clean, smart, orderly Roman city, a decaying medieval relic festered within the walls. It was an awful place of narrow streets and alleyways, with wooden-built buildings clustered and crammed together. A place where all trade and industry was concentrated in that 1 square mile behind the walls. As people began to move beyond the city walls, the sensible thing to do if you had money was, of course, to build your house westward towards the fresh wind. Even today, the basic pattern of real estate remains the same, and the West End of London is far more expensive than the East End. It is the West End of London we see here with its most famous landmark, Buckingham Palace, the official residence of Her Majesty, the Queen. Familiar landmarks stand out like beacons upon your arrival in the city. London's classic Austin taxis, with their renowned courteous drivers, are as much a part of the city scene as Big Ben. London's famed hotels extend a uniquely proper, yet warm greeting.
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Grosvenor House.
Hotels tailored in elegance are like well-run palaces. And why not? Famous guests frequently invite royalty for dinner. The proper English breakfast is a hearty affair. Somerset Maugham said, "To eat well in England is to eat breakfast 3 times a day." According to the Queen, the best way to see London is from a double-decker landmark. When on foot, bobbies are always helpful. Neither traffic nor tourist will stay these serried marchers from their time-honored ritual. One of Britain's most popular tourist attractions is the changing of the guard in front of Buckingham Palace. Westminster Abbey, cornerstone of the British monarchy, where kings are christened, crowned, married, and buried. The great Palace of Westminster, home to the Houses of Parliament, is the symbol of British government. Medieval kings called their noble councils to gather at this site. Neo-Gothic stonework swirls in silent history. Tower Bridge provides the best view of the Tower of London.
Now here, ladies and gentlemen, is the world-famous Tower Green. There in the corner is the Bloody Tower, and the walk which connects up with the buildings adjacent to it is known as Raleigh's Walk. From the second floor on the right-hand side, the second and fourth windows along, that is where the 2 queens, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, had the rather dubious privilege of being able to look out and watch their own private execution site being built ready for them here.
Cleopatra's Needle was a gift from Egypt. St. James Palace offers a unique glimpse of Tudor London. St. Paul's Cathedral, a sublime example of man's ability to reach toward the infinite. Victory Gate Arch leads to Trafalgar Square, a favorite gathering place for demonstrators and tourists. Lord Nelson reposes atop this 145-foot monument. Hyde Park, where uncommon wisdom flourishes at Speaker's Corner.
All crimes will be dealt with in a similar manner. You won't put people in jail, right? Minor crimes of tax evasion might bring, say, 1 year working in an apple orchard. But if you get a major crime of tax evasion, as I said before, you'll get a week in America.
London's core of royal parks, St. James, Green, and Hyde Park, offer a respite from the pulse of the city. Kensington Palace in Hyde Park, the royal residence in 1689, is now the home of the Prince and Princess of Wales and Princess Margaret. The Albert Hall, named after the Prince Consort, is a celebration of Victorian architecture. It faces Kensington Gardens and the Albert Memorial. For many, lunchtime is pub time. The signs out front, like a playful wink, tell much what they're like inside. A touch of humor, warmth, and good things to eat. From fancy hotels to neighborhood restaurants, carving rooms are popular. The British are notorious carnivores, and good roast meats are always available, often at bargain lunchtime prices. You'll never go away hungry. Another tradition, fish and chips. The funky Hard Rock Cafe and the clubby Swan are part of London's broad luncheon diversity. And there's always time for the traditional lager. Have money to spend? London is one of the smartest, most exciting shopping cities. Covent Gardens has gone from fruit and flowers to boutiques and trendy restaurants. Portobello Road's antique district becomes a Saturday flea market with matchless bargains and priceless people. Fortnum & Mason on Piccadilly, a carriage trade department store, is the aristocrat of gourmet food shops. Rare antiques and gifts for royalty are available for a price. Celebrated Savile Row, Mecca of the well-tailored man.
Yes. We've been selling umbrellas here in London for 150 years, and it's still raining.
Here at Locke's, we'd never consider a gentleman properly dressed unless he was wearing a hat.
With the Duke of Edinburgh and the Prince of Wales as fashion arbiters, the English gentleman is honor-bound to greet each day in style. In this land of tradition, high tea is a uniquely British affair. Cakes, crumpets, cookies, and creme tempt the palate. The British drink about 435 million pounds of tea a year. They drink it hot, and they drink it strong with no nonsense about tea bags and lemon slices. High tea, the rules are simple. Take small sips, small bites, and don't bring up any big subjects. London has almost as many museums as pigeons. Founded in 1753, the British Museum is a megatrove of knowledge and history. Located in the largest classical building in London, it is also home to the Museum of Mankind, known for its superb ethnologic collection. The Natural History Museum, a cathedral to nature. The Tate Gallery on Millbank along the Thames is renowned for its British and modern art, especially its masses of Turners, Hogarths, and Gainsboroughs. At Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, world-known figures, past and present, startle visitors with their lifelike gaze. The Imperial War Museum recalls London's bravest hour. Victoria Station is the main transportation hub for many delightful, well-known destinations within easy reach of the city. Fast, comfortable trains leave frequently for journeys into the dappled green countryside. The Henley Regatta on the shaded waters of the Thames brings together old boys in straw boaters and pink socks cheering on the old school ties. Spreading from the shores of a man-made lake in Oxfordshire are 2,700 acres of parkland belonging to Blenheim Palace. Blenheim, seat of the Dukes of Marlborough, a Baroque palace of magnificent proportions, surrounded by formal gardens. What draws visitors here is an interest in Winston Churchill. It happens that he was born here in Blenheim. The rooms are sumptuous, all 320 of them, befitting the great Dukes of Marlborough, from whom Winston was descended on his father's side. But the most visited room of all is Winston Churchill's. Visitors from the United States are reminded that a good deal of American blood flows through Winston Churchill's veins, that his mother was warm-blooded Jenny Jerome of New York, that Douglas MacArthur was a distant cousin, and his great-great-great-grandmother was a full-blooded Iroquois Indian. Unchanged since Elizabethan times, Anne Hathaway's cottage is a revealing museum of Shakespeare's rural life. Stratford-upon-Avon, where history's greatest playwright was born and buried. The Royal Shakespeare Company honors him by performing at least 6 of his plays each season at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Windsor Castle, still a royal residence, dominates the town of Windsor. Originally built by William the Conqueror, it is the oldest and largest inhabited castle in the world. Stonehenge, Europe's most famous prehistoric site, is believed to be the remains of an ancient temple, its purpose now lost to the mysteries of time. The ancient town of Bath, 107 miles west of London, was developed in about AD 55 by Romans seeking early creature comforts. It still bubbles with sparkling springs and fountains. Scores of visitors enjoy the Abbey churchyard in the heart of the city and the colorful shops and restaurants which dot the Georgian streets. The recent revolution in British restaurants has been all to the good. Elegant restaurants attract a loyal clientele, and for good reason. One taste, and the ghosts of pampered kings dance around your table. Sparkling as brightly as the crown jewels, the Thames beckons.
20 bridges from Tower to Kew wanted to know what the river knew. For they were young and the Thames was old, and this is the tale the river told. I walk my beat before London town, 5 hours up and 7 down. Up I go till I end my run at Tide End town, which is Teddington. Down I come with mud in my hands and plaster it over the Maplin sands. I remember the bat-winged lizard birds, the age of ice, and the mammoth herds, and the giant tigers that stalked them down through Regent's Park into Camden Town. And I remember like yesterday the earliest Cockney who came my way. He was death to feather, fin, fur. He trapped my beavers at Westminster. He netted my salmon, he hunted my deer, he killed my heron off Lambeth Pier. Whilst down at Greenwich for slaves and tin, the tall Phoenician ship stole in, and life was gay, and the world was new, and I was a mile across. And
Concert halls, theaters, nightclubs, and pubs. When it comes to nightlife, London wrote the book. The stalwart favored traditional pubs for light dinner and hearty conviviality. Dazzling lights burning deep into the night invite you to come out and play. From Piccadilly to Leicester Square, London's legendary theatre district has been offering the world's finest productions for over a century and is still the best bargain in town. Once capital of a world empire, London's affair with its past is both understandable and contagious. Its drums and trumpets play for one and all. When a man is tired of London, wrote Samuel Johnson, he is tired of life. Paris. Brilliant, magic, dazzling Paris. Arrive in Paris and familiar landmarks move into view like the warm memories of a cherished friendship. Geneviève, a holy woman, saved Paris from Attila the Hun in AD 451. She was declared the patron saint of Paris. The Pantheon was built in her honor. Clovis I, king of the Franks, made Paris his headquarters in the 6th century. Henry IV, a notorious ladies' man, personified Paris of the 16th century as a city of romance and the good life. An urban planner, he renovated much of the city to accommodate the growing aristocracy. He built the Pont Neuf, the first stone bridge to span the Seine. Louis XIV, best known for the brilliance of his court, moved the royal family to Versailles in the late 17th century. Paris continued to blossom under his rule, drawing international visitors and trade. But the king's grandiose lifestyle brought the French people to their knees. With the cry of liberty, they stormed the Bastille in 1789, spilling royal blood in the streets of Paris. Napoleon, 10 years later, envisioned Paris as the capital of Europe. He restored the damaged city and built such monuments as the Arc de Triomphe. The Eiffel Tower, a miracle of engineering, was built to commemorate the centennial of the French Revolution. Before World War I, Paris was a magnet for avant-garde writers and artists. Picasso, Hemingway, Gertrude Stein, and others marked their successes with the inevitable pop of champagne. To truly savor France, one must first taste Paris. Familiar landmarks appear as the city unfolds. Paris entices first-time visitors, luring them closer and closer. You've arrived. A vast symphony in stone is how Victor Hugo described it in his famous novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. One of the world's great architectural masterpieces, it took over 150 years to build. From the top of its rectangular towers, you can see a stunning view of central Paris. Gargoyles recall Hugo's legendary bell ringer, Quasimodo, who found solace among the grim sentinels. The view includes the white dome Basilica of Sacré-Cœur, the Basilica of the Sacred Heart, in its superb Montmartre setting atop the highest of Paris's 7 hills. The church is approached by a funicular. Its central tower contains one of the largest bells in the world, more than 17 tons. The area around the church was the artist quarter of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. No building epitomizes the Parisian bourgeoisie more strikingly than the Paris Opera with its lavish excesses. Visitors marvel at the building's grand interior, its white marble staircase and golden foyer. The Arc de Triomphe was commissioned by Napoleon in 1806 to commemorate French military victories. Today, it is as much a symbol of Paris as Notre Dame in the Eiffel Tower. More than 5,000 people a day visit the Eiffel Tower. Completed in 1889, it was the subject of considerable controversy. Critics called it an eyesore. One described it as a hollowed candlestick. But in 1964, the much-loved tower was classified a national monument. Paris at dusk, the most romantic city in the world at the most romantic time of the day. A boat ride on the Seine is one of the best ways to get to know the city firsthand. The Seine offers some of the most beautiful riverscapes in the world. The boat rides are frequent and inexpensive. Most last about an hour. Bargains galore can be found in the traditional Marché aux Puces, the French flea market, a Paris institution for more than 2 centuries. What would Paris be without the Louvre? A royal residence long before it became a famous art museum, the Louvre houses more than 400,000 works of art in 41 separate galleries and is one of the world's richest museums. Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, the lady with the legendary smile. And perhaps one of the greatest treasures of all time, the armless Venus de Milo. Auguste Rodin was possibly the greatest sculptor of the 19th century. The Hotel Briand, where he lived and worked for the last 9 years of his life, is now a museum devoted to his work. The artist's personal collection is also displayed, works by many of his closest friends. The gardens outside the hotel make an ideal location for some of Rodin's larger works. One of the more controversial museums in Paris is the Pompidou Center, a 6-level fantasy of glass and steel. It fuses all forms of contemporary art and culture. The Cartier Foundation comprises a 40-acre park on the outskirts of Paris. Established in 1984, its primary function is to encourage conceptual artists by acquiring and exhibiting their works. Also new on the Paris scene is the Lafayette Amusement Park, a fantasy land for young and old alike. Only in Paris can a railway station with a turn-of-the-century interior design be transformed into a beautiful art museum, the Musée d'Orsay. The new Picasso Museum in the Marais district possesses an outstanding collection of Picasso's works, while La Cité des Sciences presents an unprecedented universe of activities, a far-reaching museographic instrument. Place de Vosges is the oldest square in Paris. The simple pleasures of living seem natural here, surrounded by centuries of history and culture. The Place de la Bastille is the setting for the new Bastille Opera, dedicated to lyric art and dance. Strollers look in at the most famous food store in Paris, Beauchamp. A carnival of quiche and caviar, wine and coffee, pastry, fruit and cheese. Service is Italian style. You pay first, collect your sales receipt, and exchange it for your purchase. The Paris Bakery, Boulangerie, is a warm, inviting place. Traditional French bread and fancy breads have no preservatives and should be consumed quickly. No problem. Outdoor cafes are a Paris ritual. Many serve tasty snacks and plat du jour. Wine bars proliferate, bread and Beaujolais. No matter where you are in Paris, you're never far from the warmth and conviviality of a corner cafe. Spring in Paris means the beginning of the racing season. Of the many racetracks in and around Paris, Longchamps is by far the best known and most fashionable. Built by Cardinal Richelieu in the 17th century, the Royal Palace of the Louvre was set on fire by a mob during the Commune of 1871. The Pont Alexandre III epitomizes the Belle Époque period. Beyond the bridge, historic canals, still functional and ever romantic, reach into the past. Begun in 1764, La Madeleine couldn't quite figure out what it wanted to be. Raised and rebuilt twice, it finally became a church in 1842. Paris is alive with fountains. The Luxembourg Palace and Gardens were commissioned by Marie de Medici, widow of Henry IV, who grew bored with life at the Louvre. The stately gardens filled with ornate statuary and the famous Medici fountain. More of the same grandeur can be seen in the Tuileries. A world fashion leader, Paris symbolizes haute couture. Store windows shimmer with the latest in ultimate chic. Renowned designers are lionized. Fashion is an art form in Paris. Its principal gallery is the world's smartest, richest shopping street, the Rue de Faubourg Saint-Honoré. Familiar names of the world of haute couture are emblazoned on its altar. Paris is truly a shopper's nirvana, overflowing with fashions to fit your taste and pocketbook. to get away from it all? Buy a ticket at any of Paris's 4 main railroad stations. Climb aboard one of France's modern new super trains and head off into the Parisian countryside. To Reims, Chartres, Fontainebleau, Versailles, the Royal Forest, the Champagne and Chateau country, all only hours or less away. Vaux-le-Vicomte near Milan is considered one of the finest of 17th century chateaux and served as the model for the Palace and Park at Versailles. Landscape design and the fine arts were completely integrated for the first time, giving France a dominance in art and architecture that lasted for more than a century. A spectacular attraction outside of Paris is Versailles. Transformed from a small hunting lodge into a splendid palace, befitting the most powerful ruler of all of Europe, the godlike Sun King Louis XIV. The formal gardens at Versailles cover 250 acres and include 600 fountains. It's impossible to see all of the palace itself in a single day. Special sound and light shows and period dances are performed at Versailles during the summer evenings. Swords and daggers, powdered wigs, and elegant costumes are all part of the nightly entertainment. As evening approaches, Paris pays homage to the gods of gastronomy. The great French chefs, the high priests of la haute cuisine, are as celebrated as royalty. Where to eat, what to eat, decisions. Nouvelle cuisine or cuisine bourgeoise. Regional cooking or city style. A fabled 3-star restaurant or a corner bistro. For most, eating out in Paris means a small, colorful, good-smelling restaurant, usually owned and operated by the same family for generations. Café La Coupole on Boulevard Montparnasse, where Hemingway wrote "The Sun Also Rises." Nightlife in Paris means fabulous revues and famous cabarets. Paris is the city of light. Romantic lights. To discover Paris is to fall in love. It's an all-consuming affair that lingers long after you've gone away. eternal city, where Leonardo and Michelangelo once walked, awakens with the knowledge of the centuries and the growing excitement of a new day. Rome's origins are cloaked in the legend of Romulus and Remus, twin sons of Mars. Left to die on the banks of the Tiber, they were suckled by a she-wolf and survived. Romulus the Stronger killed his brother and founded Rome, naming himself as king. It was the Etruscans who first settled Rome, a community on Palatine Hill, one of the 7 hills of Rome. They were best known for their skills in art and jewelry. After a succession of 7 kings, the Republic was founded in 509 BC with the Forum as its epicenter. It was the commercial, civic, and religious heart of ancient Rome. Rome's first highway, the Appian Way, opened the door to expansion and the conquest which followed. Julius Caesar, an extraordinary soldier and leader, was appointed ruler for life in 44 BC and was assassinated the same year. Augustus followed Caesar to become Rome's first emperor, opening a golden age of culture. The Romans had a passion for horse racing, and the Circus Maximus was their grandest stadium. The Theater Marcellus held more than 20,000 spectators. Augustus also completed the Pantheon. The depraved Nero, who fiddled while Rome burned, began the mass persecution of Christians. Lions instead of chariots filled the Circus Maximus. Vespasiano, a true ruler of the people, retained stability after the death of Nero. He built the Colosseum as a tribute to the citizens of Rome. Constantine the Great, the first Christian ruler of Rome, ended the massacre of Christians and guaranteed the freedom of worship. Byzantine art flourished. Pope Leo III coronated Charlemagne, a Christian Frank who brought church and state together. Pope Leo X, the great lover of art, ushered in the age of the Renaissance, and with it, Michelangelo, who created the magnificent dome on St. Peter's, as well as numerous works inside. Bernini, another sculptor and architect of rare genius, also contributed to the church's splendors. The Fountain of the 4 Rivers in the Piazza Navona is one of his greatest triumphs. The Tiber River Bridge and the Victor Emmanuel Monument are welcoming landmarks. But it is the exciting sights and sounds of the city that most appeal. With its tradition of warm hospitality, Rome offers hotels of every variety, from the grandest of the grand to more moderate hotels and simple pensioni. The coffee bar is a Roman institution. Cappuccino from early morning until noon. Espresso for a mid-afternoon pick-me-up. Caffè Corretto, coffee with a bit of brandy later in the day. Coffee and conversation mix well in Rome. The Eternal City is a living, life-sized museum. Turn a corner, face the sun, and walk in the shadows of antiquity. The Trevi Fountain is one of Rome's best-known landmarks. Throw in a coin, and you'll be sure to return again. Horse-drawn carriages clop across historic streets and ancient boulevards. These and other forms of transportation help break the city down to manageable sizes. A daily surge of traffic turns central Rome into an obstacle course for pedestrians. Crossing the street requires blind determination, the deftness of a ballet dancer, and the skill of a seasoned matador. The Piazza Navona, dominated by Bernini's massive sculpture, is considered the finest of Rome's many public squares. Artists and poets come here for inspiration. In ancient times, the square was used for tournaments and ceremonial events, but today's activities are far more leisurely. The Piazza di Spagna, the Spanish Steps, the heart of Rome, if not its exact center, has long been a place to meet people and exchange ideas, relax, or just while away the day. Rome's flea markets are legendary. On Sunday, the Porta Portese is in full swing. Produce, fruit, and fresh flowers shine like jewels at the Campo dei Fiori and other neighborhood markets. The Villa Borghese Gardens and the Hill of Aventino are two of Rome's best-known sanctuaries. Rome draws sightseers like butterflies to flowers. The Forum, where fragments of classical architecture are scattered about like a child's abandoned toys, was the principal foundation of ancient Rome. The three upstanding columns of the Temple of Mars the Avenger recall its glory. The Victor Emmanuel Monument, completed in 1911, wed classic and modern architecture. The building stands, but the marriage failed. Of all of Rome's ancient monuments, the Pantheon is the best preserved. Built by the Emperor Hadrian, its stately marble interior has changed little since ancient times. The Sant'Angelo Castle, built in AD 139, is now a museum filled with historic relics, weapons, and art. It faces the 2nd century Ponte Sant'Angelo, lined with angels by Bernini. Forums, temples, and other remnants of a 2,000-year-old civilization are on view at the mouth of the Tiber in the ancient seaport town of Ostia Antica. The grandest and most celebrated of all Rome's ancient monuments, the Colosseum, was a third of a mile in circumference, 137 feet high, and accommodated 55,000 spectators on marble seats. It was often the scene of gory spectacle as gladiators fought to the death and Christians were thrown to the lions. Now somber and brooding, the Colosseum stands impervious to the sights and sounds of the modern city.
So, Rome is full of legends. And the one here is particularly interesting because it's regarding the mouth of truth. In old times, was even a dangerous one because you were taken here, and if you were lying, you were not able to take your hand out. Only if you're not lying, you were able to save yourself. Today it doesn't work anymore because today nobody lies anymore.
Everything closes at lunchtime, everything except cafes and restaurants. Romans love to eat, and they snack and gossip for hours on end. Everyone eats al fresco, outdoors in the sunshine.
Roma, vedi tu, bella di più. Oh, che se tutto cambiato, per tempo beato a rifugge di più.
The The luncheon ceremony ends with a leisurely dessert. The city's penchant for gelati goes back to ancient times when Romans brought la dolce neve, sweet snow, back from the mountains to mix with honey and fruit. Today, take all natural ingredients, eggs, cream, sugar, fresh milk, and flavoring, and voila, the world's best ice cream. Rome's Via Condotti is the most elegant, renowned, and aristocratic shopping street in all of Italy. A street where sultans of fashion bestowed daily benediction on the faithfully stylish. For those who shop the world's smartest streets, the Via Condotti is the cornucopia of chic. The Piazza del Campidoglio, the spiritual heart of Rome, was designed by Michelangelo. His powerful renderings of the human body have never been equaled. Museums flank the piazza with other masterpieces. Outside, a dismembered giant, fragments of Constantine. Museums abound. Rome is one of the world's great treasure troves of art, sculpture, and antiquities. The keyhole at number 3, Knights of Malta Piazza, frames the magnificent Basilica of St. Peter's. St. Peter's, its vast dome is visible from all corners of the city. Center of papal Rome, headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican is an independent sovereign state governed by the Pope. Drawn by its benevolent glow, thousands visit St. Peter's daily. An army of Swiss guards in uniforms designed by Michelangelo protect Vatican and visitor alike. Inside, Michelangelo's dome radiates celestial repose. The altar is by Bernini, who founded the Baroque style. The stunning Pietà, the only work Michelangelo ever signed. The Sistine Chapel, the ultimate celebration of Michelangelo's genius. The ceiling, which took 4 years to complete, tells the story of creation. Even exciting cities can become claustrophobic. Don't worry, an excellent transportation system offers ample escape to the hills beyond. To the south, San Felice Circeo is located on a magnificent plunder of white rock that strides boldly into the sea. The interior courtyard of an old fortress forms the center of town. Fishermen harvest the riches of the Mediterranean, their nets ever ready, as others play in the sun. One of Italy's most exclusive resorts, Circeo, is where the legendary sorceress Circe once cast her magic spells. Early Roman villas are equally compelling. The most sumptuous of them is Hadrian's villa, built in AD 120. Its classic antiquity now reflected softly in the ripple of quiet pools. 4 miles northeast is Villa d'Este, a 16th century cardinal's palace with magnificent gardens and cascading fountains. The Avenue of the 100 Fountains is lined with playful jets of water. Spirits soar in the misty sunlight. Sunset over the Tiber River brings on moods of dreamy reflection. With radiant bride and handsome groom, a wedding in Rome is a feast of fidelity. While in the restaurants, where there's always a lavish display of good things to eat, pasta is king. Humble trattorie and elegant eating places beckon. Rome's real social life takes place at the dinner table. Romans eat late, and they eat well, the evening meal being the main repast of the day. Finding a restaurant isn't difficult. The trail of gastronomy is lighted by neon.
Appresso. Luigi, porta la bacio al Margarino.
A glass of wine, a dish of fettuccine, and thee. Not surprisingly, the frantic pace of Rome's daylight hours unwinds slowly, finally spilling over into the night. The city seems ever reluctant to accept its wrap of darkness. Fountains bubble on, and lovers drift gently into yet another dawn.
Fantasy.